What's good? It's Wood. I want to talk a moment about this Zuffa deal and largely about the current state of boxing as it stands, because there was also even more recent than the Zuffa boxing, that's the Dana White-led boxing promotion. Even more recently than that was the news that there is a new branding deal between Matchroom and Riyadh Season. So you see Riyadh Season with their hand in all buckets, essentially. And there's been the question of, okay, is TKO Boxing, which is the conglomerate, but is Zuffa Boxing specifically, is it going to take over? The answer to that question, or rather that question in general, is different than is Riyadh Season or even TKO, but let's say Riyadh Season going to take over? Because the way I see it, Riyadh Season has already taken over the sport. I mean, their ability to spend money has allowed them to put on by far the most significant fights over the past now 2 years, right? You could determine when that starting gun was. Was it Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou? So Riyadh Season has dominated the sport of boxing to where there's a concern that I want to address in this video as well. But Zuffa Boxing looks like they are taking the stance of being a league of prospects and contenders that can one day feature on a major Riyadh Season card. And it's interesting because we know that the UFC has this new deal with Paramount Plus / CBS. Zuffa has this deal with Paramount Plus CBS. And my question is, why would Paramount Plus want to put on less than elite boxing? Why would they want to put on, essentially, if it works well for Zuffa, let's say it's the equivalent, at least in the first year to 2 years, if it's the equivalent of Pro Box TV, which I love and I see as being super valuable, super important to the sport of boxing. If all you could get in televised boxing was the highest elite level, then boxing is essentially dead, because 90% of boxing is non-elite, and you need those. Look, Lamont Roach just fought on Pro Box, recently. Drew Kimbayev, who gave Subriel Matias one of his toughest fights, fought on Pro Box TV. Lester Martinez built his name on Pro Box TV. He just fought that super even fight, super competitive fight with Christian Mbili. So Pro Box TV, I look at as being a very valuable asset in the sport of boxing, and you could get it free on YouTube, and its commentary is outstanding. You've got Paulie Malignaggi, you've got Chris Algieri, Robert Garcia, and Jimmy Smith. But if Zuffa Boxing is able to sign that caliber of fighter, then they're in a decent spot. But it is in no way a takeover of boxing, because my question is, one, what will eventually attract the bigger name fighters, the elite talent? I don't see an avenue for that. Also, when it comes to the next level or the next generation of top tier fighters, because one theory that I have is maybe, Dana White and Turki Al-Sheikh are going to let this Gervonta Davis, era of high earners kind of phase out and age out of the sport, to where they can start attracting the next wave of the Shakur Stevensons, the Keyshawn Davises, the next wave of prospect, contender, future champions. But they're going to have to compete with Top Rank, which still doesn't have a home as far as I know. Top Rank is still looking for a boxing home to showcase their fights. Right now, it looks like they're leasing out a lot of their elite talent. So when you see a Top Rank fighter fighting, they are often now co-promoting with Riyadh Season or somebody else until Top Rank can land a deal. And I heard Bob Arum recently say that it might be some fights on this platform, some fights in that platform, rather than exclusively with ESPN as they were in their last deal. So Top Rank has often been one of the best at signing, say, Olympians straight out the gate. Although it was Matchroom that signed Andy Cruz. But for the most part, Top Rank has been like the leader in signing the top tier youngest talent, followed by probably Golden Boy. Golden Boy is really good at picking up on some of the, the homegrown US and Mexican talent, the younger talent that then, comes of age with Golden Boy. See Virgil Ortiz, Floyd Schofield, that guy Iriarte, who fights on a lot of the Golden Boy undercards, who's going to make a splash at some point. He's still working up the ranks, but Top Rank Golden Boy right now I see as being the leaders of signing the new talent. We'll see if that changes over time, but again, you've got to draw the distinction between what is Riyadh season partnering with TKO Boxing and what that is, and what Zuffa is. The way I see it right now, I think Zuffa is going to pepper the calendar with a lot of activity, because my concern, and this is the concern that I wanted to bring up, what happens to the rest of boxing as you get these consolidated stacked fight cards, these Riyadh season cards, but then you see these big lulls in action otherwise? Like, let's keep it real. Over the past couple of weeks, really a few weeks, ever since Canelo Crawford, the calendar has been very, very sparse. I don't recall the last time we have gotten a month as bad as the last month that we've had in boxing, where you've had such a lack of high-profile fights. It's been really bad. Again, Top Rank is out of the game. We're waiting for the next PBC card, which is probably going to be that Sebastian Fundora versus Keith Thurman card. And even David Benavidez, who is a PBC fighter, is going to be fighting on a Riyadh season card when he fights Anthony Yard coming up. And I think that that's the same card that's got Devin Haney versus Brian Norman Jr. Or should I say Brian Norman Jr. versus Devin Haney, since it's Haney challenging for Brian Norman's title. I love that fight, by the way. But yeah, PBC is kind of like, they'll set up shop like almost quarterly, like every 3 months. They'll put on an event and then they'll disappear for the next 3 months. So you'll have a big David Benavidez fight, or a Tank Davis fight, or a Fundora versus Tim Tszyu, something like that. And then they'll drop off the face of the planet, almost like they're a circus that's then packing up the tent, and then they're gonna pop up again 3 months down the road. That's not enough to sustain boxing. Like, if it was up to PBC in their current realm, this is post Showtime PBC era, you wouldn't know that boxing existed, hardly, because they give you nothing between those, will be generous and say quarterly cards. Sometimes it's even less than that. Sometimes it's like on a trimester basis, like every 4 months. So PBC isn't able to sustain boxing right now. They are way too sparse, talent-wise and calendar-wise. Like, their fighters often suffer a lot of stagnation and are just not as busy. That's why you see a lot of PBC guys signing with other outlets over the past year. There's just not enough activity. And then you've got Top Rank, where who the hell knows where they land and how they stand. But when they were cooking on ESPN, I thought that they were doing a fairly good job at keeping the calendar active, because that's what you want. Like, you can't just have these feast or famine scenarios where you either have this big ass Riyadh season fight card that's got 5 main event level fights on one card, and then the next 2 to 4 to 6 weeks is a big drought. We can't have that, right? So you would want more good Golden Boy cards on DAZN. You would want more good Matchroom cards on DAZN. And I think Matchroom's been slipping over the past year. They've been feeding a lot of their talent to these Riyadh season cards, but the purely Matchroom, non-Riyadh season action, it's been pretty few and far between. We are far removed from having like a good Lee Wood fight and a Lee Wood level fight over the course of a few cards before you get to the next Anthony Joshua super card, right? I feel like Matchroom kind of needs to, I know they just struck this deal, so maybe there's going to be like a cash infusion from Riyadh season with this new Matchroom Riyadh season deal, which again goes back to Riyadh season kind of being the puppeteer that's pulling all the strings. Right now, it looks like they are kind of in the driver's seat with Zuffa Boxing and with TKO Boxing. Right now, they've got the money, they've got the purse strings and stuff, so they're letting Dana White handle the apparatus and the infrastructure, but this is kind of still a Riyadh season-led endeavor. No pun intended. Endeavor used to be a holding company that was over the UFC in the past. So now, again, you've got Riyadh season also partnering with Matchroom. So are they going to be funding the Zuffa stuff, TKO Boxing, and Matchroom? It looks like more and more boxing entities are going to be beholden, damn near, to Turki Al Sheikh and Riyadh season. That's just how things are shaping up. Now, if in the short run, it's peppering the boxing calendar, so now you have Pro Box TV with the lower level, but still compelling and good fight cards. Not as good as like a top ranked main event, non-pay-per-view even. Not as good as those, not as good as most of the high profile Matchroom non-pay-per-view cards. Not as good as those, but just, a tier or two below. We've had those in the past. Fight Night at the Forum, sometimes HBO After Dark, that level of thing. You've got with Pro Box, and now seemingly we'll see what kind of talent they're able to attract, but with Zuffa Boxing as well. And hopefully Top Rank could get back into gear and are not as beholden to Riyadh season. Hopefully they could be a self-sustaining boxing entity, because that's what you want. You want sustainability. And right now, without the spending of Riyadh season, I don't see how boxing makes it into its next phase. I feel like boxing, and we were warned about this, is becoming way too reliant on Turki Al Sheikh Riyadh season money. And PBC and their current deal with Prime is somewhat self-sustained, but it's not sustainable, or it's not doing enough to lift all tides, because again, it's just way too sparse calendar wise. So boxing's in a tough spot. You've got the high earners who aren't going to be doing any Zuffa stuff because they're used to earning what they're earning, and they're not going to be you're not going to see Dana White and Devin Haney working together anytime soon, unless it's a TKO Riyadh season card that features Devin Haney, right? So don't get it twisted. Dana White, TKO Boxing, and even Zuffa might have all had their name on that Canelo Alvarez versus Terrence Crawford card, but that was not Zuffa Boxing. That's not what you could expect from Zuffa going forward. Like, if you look at some of the names that they're signing, Vito Melnicki, he's kind of a journeyman. He's a pretty decent fighter, but he's like, right now, he hasn't proven to be better than a C+, B- level guy. If that's what Zuffa is going to be working with for the next year to 2 years, it might still be interesting if they could pepper the calendar, but what is in it for the casual fan? Because it looks like what Turki Al Sheikh wants to do is he wants to grow the sport. If you could do what the other promoters couldn't do and actually grow the fan base, then you're cooking with gas. Then you could actually build a sustainable business model. Because right now I see Riyadh season doing a ton of spending. I don't see how they're making any sort of a profit coming back from their boxing pursuits. I see them, again, doing a ton of spending, but what are they making? That's not a sustainable business model. That looks like it's a lot of marketing. That looks like it's a lot of investment, but where is the return? So if you could grow the sport and attract more fans to the sport of boxing, then you could actually make a profit, and you could have multiple entities that are sustainable, that are able to make a profit, and you could still feature high-level, top-tier talent and have enough activity throughout the calendar in those non-super cards that we've been getting recently, courtesy of Riyadh season. So yeah, stay tuned. But again, boxing is in a really, really interesting spot, and there are a lot of questions that I need answers to. Zuffa Boxing, what is a Zuffa card gonna look like? What is your typical Zuffa card gonna look like? Because I suspect that it's gonna look like boxing's equivalent to Dana White's Contender Series, something like that, where you're not getting the big names on those cards, which is fine. But I just want to know where that lands. And it's also curious, it's also interesting that is going to be taking up, that basically Paramount Plus and CBS was interested in that. Like, and I had a friend tell me that right now the way that streaming works is that it's actually the streamer's responsibility to get the numbers up, whereas before it was like the producer or the people running the show who were responsible for getting the numbers up. I've heard that it's actually now the onus is on the streaming platform, so it's not up to Dana White and Zuffa Boxing to give you the best of boxing on these Zuffa cards. Just like you're getting kind of a watered down product on a lot of those UFC fight nights. UFC product, fight over fight, card over card, isn't what it was in past years. So maybe it doesn't matter what the actual quality of the Zuffa card is, and that's its own thing. I don't think you're going to grow the sport like that. You're just going to be, peppering the calendar on a lot of poorly viewed, with very limited viewership, boxing fight cards. But what is happening with the rest of boxing? What is the state of Top Rank? How active is Golden Boy? Can Golden Boy be? Is the bulk of their highest profile talent going to be fighting in these Golden Boy partnering with the big dog Riyadh season, TKO Boxing? And that's where you're going to be seeing Virgil Ortiz, you know, in the coming months and years. And what is Matchroom Boxing going to look like over the next year to 2 years? Are they going to be able to get, because look, their card quality lately, that guy who lost to George Kambosos 2 fights ago for Kambosos before he fought Richardson Hitchens, Wiley was the A side of a Matchroom fight card main event. That is the level of, in recent months, that's what Matchroom's been looking like. So hopefully they could give us some more quality fight cards that aren't reliant on Riyadh season, Turki Al-Sheikh investment. That's what I'm hoping for. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on all these things, boxing and boxing politics, the state of boxing's business ecosystem and so forth. Let me know your thoughts on all that in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.